G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. I've been engaged in a discussion with @Dew in the Morning regarding science. And @Dew in the Morning appears to be deeply welded onto the impression that science began 300 years ago when the EuroPeons had their renaissance. And I'm really sorry, Dawn Drops, but the EuroPeons did not invent science. They bought or stole it from the Arabs who got it from the Chinese. There is no other interpretation of history unless you want to pay attention to the fact that the Australian rainbow serpent is the oldest continually practiced religion on the face of the earth. And if you'll search a movie called Boomerang Aerophysics, you'll discover who had a serious grip on the scientific method of problem solving when, right? Because asymmetric hubless boomerangs are 10,000 years old here in Australia. And you don't get to an asymmetric hubless boomerang unless you first learn to fly a cross boomerang. And you don't get there without an awful lot of scientific experimentation and observation and evaluation. But anyway, let's go and have a little bit of a look at something that's less controversial than whether Aborigines invented science with a boomerang, auto-rotating rotary wing flying machine, gyroscopically guided, controlled by secondary and tertiary gyroscopic and aerodynamic effects. Yeah. And where you come from, wherever you got your English as a second language accent, they're considered to be simple, primitive hunting sticks. Because the EuroPeons did not understand what they saw before they destroyed it. But anyway, let's have a little bit of a look at a book. And the book is called The Genius of China, 3,000 Years of Science, Discovery and Invention. And it's written by Robert Temple with an introduction by Dr. Joseph Needham, Fellow of the Royal Society, the oldest continually functioning scientific institution on the planet, and a Fellow of the British Archaeologists. Okay, paperback edition 1998, reprinted 99, 2002, 2005, text copyright Robert Temple 1981, ISBN 1-85375-292-4. Introduction by Dr. Joseph Needham, FRS-FBA, The World's Debt to China and Acknowledgements. Agriculture. Row cultivation and intensive hoeing, the iron plough, efficient horse harnesses, the rotary winnowing fan, the multi-tube bracket modern seed drill. Part 2, Astronomy and Cartography, recognition of sunspots as a solar phenomena, quantitative cartography, discover of the solar wind, the Mercator map projection, equatorial astronomical instruments. Part 3, Engineering, spouting bowls and standing waves, cast iron, the double-acting piston bellows, the crank handle, the cardan suspension or gimbals, manufacture of steel from cast iron, deep drilling for natural gas, the belt drive or driving belt, water power, the chain pump, the suspension bridge, the first cybernetic machine, the essentials of the steam engine, magic mirrors, the Siemens steel process, the segmental arch bridge, the chain drive, underwater salvage operations. Part 4, Domestic and Industrial Technology, lacquer, the first plastic, strong beer or sake, petroleum and natural gas as fuel, paper, the wheelbarrows, sliding calipers, the magic lantern, the fishing reel, the stirrup, porcelain, biological pest control, the umbrella, matches, chess, brandy and whiskey, the mechanical clock, printing, playing cards, paper money, permanent lamps, the spinning wheel, medicine and health. The Chinese discovered the circulation of the blood. circadian rhythms in the body, the science of endocrinology, the deficiency diseases, diabetes, the use of thyroid hormone, immunology. Mathematics. The Chinese invented the decimal system, a place for zero, negative numbers, extraction of higher roots and solutions of higher numerical equations, decimal fractions, using algebra and geometry, a refined value of pi, Pascal's triangle. Magnetism. Chinese invented the first compasses, dial and pointer devices, magnetic declination of the Earth's magnetic field, magnetic remnants and induction. The physical sciences. Chinese invented geobotanical prospecting, the first law of motion, the hexagonal structure of snowflakes, the seismograph, spontaneous combustion, modern geology and phosphorescent paint. Part 9, transportation and exploration. They invented the kite, manned flight with kites, first relief maps. The first contour transport canal, the parachute, miniature hot air balloons, the rudder, masts and sailing, watertight compartments in ships, the helicopter rotor and the propeller, the paddle wheel boat, land sailing, the canal pound lock. Sound and music. They invented the large tuned bell, tuned drums, hermetically sealed research laboratories, the first understanding of musical timbre, equal temperament in music. Warfare. They invented chemical warfare, poison gas, smoke bombs and tear gas. They invented the crossbow. They invented gunpowder. They invented the flamethrower. They invented flares, fireworks, bombs, grenades, landmines and sea mines. They invented the rocket and multi-stage rockets, guns, cannons, mortars and repeating guns. Up at the back of the book, Dawn Dropsies, we have this kind of an interesting, innovative chart which explains how far the EuroPeons, with their allegations that they've underconstumbled the inventions of science, actually lag behind. Row cultivation of crops and intensive hoeing, 6th century BC, 2,000 years ahead of the West. The iron plough, 6th century BC, 2,000 years ahead of the West. Efficient horse harnesses, the trace, 4th century BC, 500 years ahead. The collar, 3rd century BC, 1,000 years ahead of the West. The rotary... Say that again. Discovery of the solar wind, 6th century AD, 1,400 years in front of the West. Mercator map projection, 10th century AD, 600 years in front of the West. Mounted equatorial astronomical instruments, 13th century AD, 600 years in front of the West. Engineering, starting at 5th century, coming down to 11th century, between 2,000 and 800 years in front of the West. Domestic and industrial technology, 13th century BC for lacquer, the first plastic, 3,200 years in front of the West. Strong beer or sake, 11th century BC. Never. At no point did the West ever figure out how to make sake. Paper, 4th century BC, 2,300 years. The wheelbarrow, 1st century BC, 1,300 years in front of the West. Sliding calipers, 1st century BC, 1,700 years in front of the West. The magic lantern, 2nd century AD, 1,800 years in front of the West. The fishing reel, 3rd century AD, 1,400 years in front of the West. Are you starting to get the picture? No matter where you go, Western civilization is a very, very piss-poor third come afterwards. The Chinese invented lots of stuff and they did not trash the biosphere. The Arabs copied a lot of stuff from the Chinese and they didn't quite trash the biosphere, but they made a bloody mess of Africa. The EuroPeons, they copied a lot of stuff from the Arabs who copied it from the Chinese. And the EuroPeons, as it says in the Old Testament, they partook of the fruits of the tree of knowledge before they were old enough and mature enough to understand what they were doing. And they were thrown out from the Garden of Eden. That's why the world is coming unglued at the moment, because we have turned every fucking forest in the world into a desert by the misunderstood, selfish misapplication of the fruits of the tree of knowledge. There is no possible way that you can convince me that Western civilization has contributed anything but destruction and overpopulation and pollution and degradation to the world. Did the Chinese ever make anything extinct in the ocean? Did the Chinese get rid of the dodos? Did the Chinese get rid of the paradise parrot? Are the Chinese responsible for species extinction on Australia or South America? Did the Chinese kill the European lion? No. The EuroPeons have a very half-assed grasp of science. They're really, really good at the technology. They're really, really piss poor at the philosophy, at the thinking about the reasons for life. If you really want to pay attention to the world's oldest, best scientific philosophers, why don't you have a bit of a look at the Australian Aborigines? Perhaps you could condescend to search for and look at a movie called Boomerang Aerophysics. I had carved and flown behind a propeller that I had designed and built before I was ever able to understand enough about aerophysics and aerodynamics to make a boomerang that would fly and return. European ethnocentric xenophobic delusions of self-aggrandizement have no basis in reality. The EuroPeons didn't invent anything that mattered. They merely stole it and mass-produced it and fucked the planet with it. And while we're at it, intelligence is not on the same measuring stick with powerful God theory. If you have intelligence, it does not prevent you from having a powerful God theory, and if you have a powerful God theory, it does not prevent you from being intelligent. Okay? But if you care to consider the scientific evidence, 90% of autistics claim to be atheists. Over 70% of atheists score really highly for autistic traits. It appears there is a bilateral arrow of causality between atheism and autism. Atheists appear to be colourblind to God because they exist on the autistic spectrum. It's no more anything to be ashamed of than having male pattern baldness, or colourblindness, or same-sex attractedness. Atheism, same-sex attractedness, male pattern baldness, and colourblindness, each one of them appears to afflict about 8% of humans. 1 in 12, 1 in every platoon, 1 in every clan, tribe, or family group. Nobody yet knows what use being bald is to men. Being colourblind means being able to see through colour-based camouflage. So you're a better hunter and gatherer. Yeah? Nobody actually knows what being an atheist is good for as a survival trait, unless it is being able to resist the imprecations of religious megalomaniacs, and there are such people out there. It is quite entirely possible that society needs to have 8% of its members constitutionally unable to perceive the mind of God so that they are able to resist cult leaders. But it's fairly certain that being same-sex attracted is a pro-survival feature, because males and females who are same-sex attracted are particularly good at nurturing their nieces and nephews. So it would please me, it would probably please other people who are not colourblind to God, if the people who are colourblind to God would tone down their rhetoric, would accept the fact that their inability to perceive the mind of God is not some kind of elite scientific vision of truth. And perhaps if the atheists would cease to pretend that their religious belief that there is no God, a belief about God, is a religious belief, and atheism is a belief that there is no God, if the atheists could condescend to accept that their belief that there is no God is no form of science at all whatsoever, and the only form of science which concerns itself with the possibility of disembodied intelligences floating in space, aka gods, ghosts, demons, sprites, angels, etc., is a branch of science called astrophysics. And according to astrophysics, there are at the moment at least 13, and in the history of the universe there's a possible infinite number of disembodied intelligences, sentient, aware minds. These are called Boltzmann brains. And according to Stephen Hawking, there's an infinite number of them. So anybody who says they're an atheist and therefore they have a scientific belief that it's not possible for any intelligence to ever exist unless it's supported by a neurological structure of anatomy and physiology, pumped by blood from a heart, fed by oxygen from lungs. If anybody tells you that they're an atheist and therefore they believe that, and thus and because nobody's allowed to have a God theory, I'm sorry, they don't understand science, they don't understand atheism, they certainly fucking don't understand God. So, Dawn Dropsicles, go and learn a little bit about science outside of Europe. Go and find out just how far science had advanced before the EuroPeon techno-fascist industrial barbarians decided to catch up with stolen knowledge from the Arabs, which had been got from the Chinese anyway. You have nothing to be proud of. The white side of my heritage has nothing to be proud of. We have fucked the biosphere because we have embraced the fruits of the tree of knowledge before we were ready. Maybe we should have stuck to religion, Dawn Dropsicles. There you go. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. It's a malt liquor video, and this is number 6. And they're 1.9 standard drinks each. Sorry about that, honey bunch, but yeah, sometimes I spit back. Ciao.